What do you do when someone looks you in the eye and tries to make you feel small? Not with fists, not with loud words, but with subtle jabs, fake smiles, and the kind of silence that screams louder than hate. You freeze. You doubt yourself. You try to be the bigger person. But deep inside, something burns. A truth trying to rise, a voice whispering that this moment is not just pain. It's a test, and what you do next rewrites everything. There's a moment no one talks about. The seconds right after you've been hurt, but before you decide what you'll become. That's the moment toxic people hope you stay silent. They feed on your hesitation. They want your self-doubt louder than your self-worth. Because if they can keep you quiet, they can keep you controlled. But this isn't about them anymore. It's about you. It's about standing in the wreckage of what they tried to break and deciding you will not be defined by their damage. You've been holding back for too long. Smiling when it hurt, laughing off the insult, shrinking so others could stand taller. You learned how to survive. But survival isn't enough anymore. Because deep down, you know something they don't. The quiet ones aren't weak. They're just storing their strength. You don't need to explode. You need to awaken. You don't need permission. You need power. And the power you're looking for? It's already inside you. That burning feeling in your chest after someone disrespects you? That's not weakness. That's your spirit rejecting the lie that you are less. That fire is sacred. It's your truth, refusing to be silenced. And if you ignore it, if you bury it to make others comfortable, you're not avoiding conflict, you're abandoning yourself. But when you listen to it, when you say enough, when you choose to no longer shrink just to keep the peace, something shifts. The same energy that once hurt you becomes the fuel that remakes you. You don't have to fight with noise. You can fight with presence, with calm, with boundaries, with knowing exactly who you are and refusing to let someone else rewrite your worth. That's not pride. That's power. And it's the kind that lasts. So don't walk away from this message. Don't brush off what you feel, because the very pain they caused, it's the doorway. The tension you feel right now, that's growth demanding space. This isn't about revenge. It's about resurrection. You are not here to stay silent. You are here to rise. And every word you hear from this point forward is not just motivation. It's a mirror reflecting who you really are beneath the fear. Stay with this. Because by the end, you won't just feel stronger. You'll remember you were never weak. You'll stop asking for power. You'll start becoming it. Toxic people don't just attack your peace, they target your identity. They study your insecurities, sense your kindness, and then weaponize both. Their goal is not always to destroy you at once, it's to chip away at you slowly, so you start doubting your own reflection. They want you to believe their voice matters more than your own. That your emotions are too much, that your boundaries are selfish. And if they can get you to believe that, they win. Not because they're powerful, but because you forgot you are. But here's the truth. They don't want you to know. The way someone treats you has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their emptiness. Their cruelty isn't a reflection of you, it's a projection of them. Hurt people, yes, but healed people don't stay where they're hurt. And the moment you see through the illusion, the chains begin to fall. Their manipulation stops being mysterious, their words stop cutting, and you begin to reclaim the one thing they fear the most, your clarity. They feed off confusion, off your silence, off the tension between what you feel and what you're afraid to say. But when you begin to understand how manipulation works, when you see the patterns, they lose power. Because clarity kills control. It breaks the cycle. You realize it's not your job to fix them. It's your job to free yourself. Toxicity thrives in the shadows. It hides in passive comments, in guilt trips dressed as concern, in subtle dominance masked as care. It wants you to question reality, to gaslight yourself, to ask, maybe it's just me? But you've asked that question too many times, and now the answer is clear. It's not you. You've just been stuck in a space where your strength was seen as a threat, where your light exposed their darkness, where your growth made their comfort shrink, and instead of rising with you, they chose to pull you down. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's not loyalty. That's fear disguised as connection. And you're done accepting it. When you become aware of this, truly aware, it's like a fog lifts. You start to see clearly. You start to feel differently. Not because they changed, but because you did. You see their digs as desperation, their silence as immaturity, their drama as a cry for relevance. And you no longer take it personally. That's where your power begins. Not when they back off, but when you stop reacting. They can no longer touch you the same way, because they no longer live in your head rent-free. They can talk, but they no longer hold your attention. They can try, but you've already outgrown the version of yourself who tolerated them. You see through them now. And when you see the truth clearly, you don't flinch, you don't fold, you stand. And standing tall, without apology, is the most dangerous thing you'll ever do to someone who once fed on your silence. You've been strong in ways no one saw. You held your breath instead of speaking your truth. You smiled through moments that shattered you. You kept peace for people who brought you nothing but chaos. That isn't weakness, it's endurance. But endurance alone is not freedom. Because every time you swallowed your voice, a piece of you disappeared. And over time, silence stopped being a choice. It became your identity. But not anymore. You're not here to survive people. You're here to rise above them. The damage they caused didn't just hurt your feelings. It rewired the way you see yourself. You started walking softer, apologizing for your presence, doubting your value, not because it was true, but because you were trained to believe it. That's how toxic energy works. It conditions you to accept less, expect less, and believe less in who you are. But conditioning is not destiny. And you can unlearn every lie they planted in your mind. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone access to your energy, your space, or your peace. The people who made you feel guilty for setting boundaries were the very ones who benefited from you having none. They never wanted the real you, just the version they could control. And now that you're waking up, they're losing grip. That discomfort you feel? It's your soul stretching into its full size. It's uncomfortable because it's new, but it's right. There will be voices, internal and external, that tell you you're overreacting, that you're too sensitive, that maybe it wasn't that bad. That's the echo of old manipulation trying to pull you back into patterns that once kept you small. Don't go back. Don't minimize what you lived through. Your feelings are not an inconvenience. Your healing is not a burden. The moment you start honoring what you feel is the moment you start becoming who you were always meant to be. You're not just recovering from toxic people, you're recovering from the version of yourself who didn't know how to protect your own heart. And that healing takes strength most people will never understand. But strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to choose yourself, to stop explaining, to stop hoping they'll change, to stop proving your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. That kind of strength isn't temporary. It rebuilds everything. You've been silenced, yes, but never erased. Every word you didn't say, every tear you didn't show, every time you held back just to keep peace, that silence had a cost. But now, your voice has value. Now your peace has protection. Now your heart has boundaries. You're not here to be digestible. You're not here to be liked. You're here to be whole. And the moment you decide to stop shrinking is the moment you start expanding, not just into the life you deserve, but into the power you were always meant to live in. You don't owe the world your silence to make others comfortable. You don't have to dim your light to keep fragile egos safe. The time for playing small has ended. Because every time you hold back your truth, every time you water down your strength, you betray yourself. And the price of that betrayal is far too high. It costs you your peace, your clarity, your sense of self. But when you decide to reclaim your voice, when you finally say no more, something powerful shifts inside you. You stop reacting to life. You start creating it. The power of your voice isn't just in what you say. It's in what you no longer tolerate. It's in what you walk away from without explanation. It's in the silence that comes from knowing your worth, not from fear. Real confidence doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. It stands firm, steady, unshaken. The world doesn't get to decide how loud or quiet you should be. That's your choice now. And your voice? It's not too much. It's been held back for far too long. This is the beginning of something deeper. Not performance, not reaction, but ownership. The moment you begin to speak from your core, without apology, without guilt, you stop negotiating with people who never saw your value. You stop shrinking to be digestible. You stop entertaining conversations where your soul isn't safe. Because you've learned now that your energy is sacred, your time is valuable, and your peace is not up for compromise. Some people won't like it. They'll say you've changed, that you're cold, that you're selfish. But the truth is, you're finally awake. You're no longer available for one-sided loyalty, for emotional labor without respect, for relationships where love feels like walking on glass. You're not hard to love. You were just trying to love people who required you to abandon yourself in the process. That ends here. You're not here to explain your healing. You're here to live it. You're here to protect it. And you're here to walk so firmly in your truth that anything not aligned with it quietly exits your life. That's not loss. That's alignment. That's not loneliness. That's space being made for something higher. The more you honor your voice, the more you attract what honors you back. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And real doesn't settle. You were never meant to exist in survival mode forever. You were meant to rise, to speak, to lead, to stand. No more biting your tongue. No more guilt for putting yourself first. No more seeking approval from those who would rather keep you broken. You're not here to be palatable. You're here to be powerful. And when you finally step into your voice, not the one they told you to have, but the one that's always been buried under fear, you become unshakable. You don't just break free, you become the reason others realize they can too. They underestimated the silence because they never imagined what could grow inside it. While they talked over you, dismissed you, manipulated you, you were learning. While they thought they were breaking you, they were building you. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. Every time they doubted you, your power sharpened. Every insult, every lie, every moment you were made to feel less became a brick in the foundation of something they will never control again. You didn't just survive the attack. You studied it. And now, you're no longer reacting, you're becoming. This isn't about proving anything to anyone. This is about no longer abandoning yourself. It's about choosing peace over people-pleasing, boundaries over burnout, truth over tolerance. It's about understanding that your worth isn't something anyone gets to vote on. You don't have to be more agreeable, more quiet, more forgiving to be worthy of respect. You already are. And the moment you see that, everything starts to align, not because the world changes, but because you do. Toxic people want access, not accountability. They want reaction, not reflection. They need chaos to feel relevant. So when you no longer respond the way you used to, when your silence is no longer submission but strategy, they panic. Because control only works on those who haven't remembered who they are. And you've remembered. You've remembered that your voice has value, that your soul is not up for debate, that peace isn't passive, it's powerful. You're not cold, you're clear, you're not heartless. You're healed. You don't lash out because you don't need to. You've replaced rage with boundaries, begging with clarity, and chasing with choosing. You choose yourself now. You choose environments that don't require you to shrink. You choose conversations that don't force you to bleed just to feel heard. You're not avoiding people. You're avoiding patterns. And that's growth. You no longer break your own heart to keep others comfortable. You no longer sit in rooms where your silence is mistaken for agreement. You no longer stay quiet just to keep false peace alive. Because you've tasted your voice now. You've seen what happens when you stop waiting to be rescued and start becoming your own rescue. You've realized that no one is coming to save you from the people who drain you, but you can save yourself. And that changes everything. There's a difference between being nice and being kind. Nice is tolerating disrespect with a smile. Kind is drawing a line that protects your soul. And you've chosen kindness to yourself, to your future, to the version of you that will never again ask for permission to exist fully. That's the power they never saw coming. Not anger, not revenge, just you, awakened, aware, and absolutely done with playing small. This is not a phase. This is your new standard, your new energy, your new life. You didn't get louder, you got stronger. And when strength becomes your language, you never have to explain your silence again. You become undeniable. You become peace. You become power. There is a shift that happens when you stop waiting for validation, when you stop needing someone to recognize your pain before you're allowed to heal. That shift is called self-possession. It's quiet but unshakable. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about finally becoming yourself, without fear, without apology. You don't argue for your worth anymore. You live it. You don't beg for respect. You embody it. And in that space, toxic people can no longer survive because they rely on your doubt to thrive. You used to over-explain. You used to soften your truth so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. You made yourself small to protect their feelings while they trampled yours without hesitation. But that version of you is gone. Now, silence isn't fear. It's a boundary. Now your absence speaks louder than all the explanations you used to give. Now, peace is not something you chase, it's something you command. Because your energy is no longer available to people who expect you to bleed just to make them feel whole. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who weren't enough for your truth. People who wanted you easy to manipulate, quick to forgive, slow to rise. But you've risen. And now, they can't reach you, not because you've built walls, but because you've elevated beyond their reach. What they call distance is actually your healing. What they call change is actually your awakening. You didn't become cold. You became conscious. You didn't lose yourself. You finally found the pieces they tried to erase. Healing isn't loud. It's not for show. It's the steady, powerful rebuilding of the soul. It's deleting the need to be liked. It's unlearning the belief that your voice is dangerous. It's seeing through manipulation without letting it break you. And it's choosing to walk away, not to prove a point, but because you finally understand you were never meant to carry what they refuse to fix. You were never meant to be the one who breaks under the weight of someone else's dysfunction. This version of you does not settle. This version does not flinch when challenged. This version doesn't negotiate with toxicity. You listen to your intuition now. You trust your instincts. You don't second guess your peace. That power was always in you. They just convinced you it was too much, too loud, too intense. But your intensity is not a flaw. It's your fire. Your voice is not a threat. It's your shield. Your boundaries are not rude. They are sacred. You've stepped into a frequency that only wholeness can hear. And now, The wrong people can no longer find comfort in your presence. That's not rejection, it's protection. It means you're finally vibrating at your truth, and the people who can't meet you there, they're not your people. The old you would have tried to make them stay. This you knows better. This you walks away without anger, without noise, without regret. Because this you is done surviving. This you is becoming power. You were not born to beg for understanding. You were not placed in this world to prove your worth to people too blind to see it. Your existence is not a negotiation. It is a declaration, and the moment you stop explaining yourself is the moment you begin to reclaim every part of you they tried to bury. They couldn't handle your depth because they were shallow. They couldn't handle your strength because it reminded them of their weakness. And now, the most powerful thing you can do is no longer ask for space, you take it. Because it was always yours. You don't need to announce your evolution. The ones who try to hold you down will feel it in your distance, in your peace, in your refusal to engage in the battles you've already won within yourself. They want your attention, not your healing. They want your reaction, not your clarity. But you've moved past that. You've seen how silence becomes a weapon when it's backed by self-respect. You felt the calm that comes when you no longer let chaos pull you in. And now, that calm is your power. You've been conditioned to believe that walking away is weakness, that setting boundaries is cruel, that saying no is selfish. But those beliefs were designed to keep you compliant, to keep you doubting yourself. The truth is, your healing threatens their control. Your boundaries shatter their illusion of dominance. And your confidence dismantles every lie they ever told you about who you were allowed to be. That's why they push back harder when you rise. Not because you're wrong, but because they feel the shift, and it scares them. Your light has always been too strong for people who feed on darkness. But dimming it was never the answer. You don't heal by hiding. You heal by standing fully in the light of your own truth, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Especially then. Because the version of you that stayed silent to keep others happy was not the real you. It was a survival mask. And you've outgrown it. You've outgrown shrinking. You've outgrown tolerating the intolerable just to feel accepted. You've outgrown being palatable at the cost of being powerful. You are not required to carry the weight of those who refuse to grow. You are not here to fix broken people who benefit from staying broken. You are not a dumping ground for projection, guilt, or shame. You are here to rise, to speak, to own your place without apology. And anyone who tries to dim that rise has already shown you they can't come with you. Let them stay where they are. You've got mountains to move. This is your season of becoming untouchable. Not because you're closed off, but because you're deeply connected to yourself. Not because you hate others, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for those who wouldn't even hand you a bandage. If someone has a new car and they want you to buy it, you feel in the pocket of your pants, in your pocket you get a new car. Did you finally love yourself enough to stop bleeding for those who wouldn't even hand you a bandage? This is where you end the cycle. This is where you transform silence into strength. This is where you become unstoppable. Not everyone will understand your silence, and they're not supposed to. Silence isn't emptiness. It's energy. It's presence. It's protection. It's the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the place where your real power lives. Calm, unbothered, unshaken. The old version of you would have spoken just to be heard, reacted just to feel seen, engaged just to feel alive. But not anymore. Because now you've learned that real strength doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need permission. It doesn't need approval. It simply is. You are no longer driven by fear of being misunderstood. You're grounded in the truth of who you are. You're not afraid of being alone because you've met yourself in your solitude. You've looked your wounds in the eye and refused to surrender to them. You faced the chaos within and built order without needing to be rescued. That kind of growth isn't loud. That kind of strength doesn't shout. It moves in silence and shows up in the way you no longer flinch at things that used to destroy you. Toxic people fear your stillness because it means they no longer have power over your emotions. They can't control what they can't reach, and now you're unreachable to their games, unavailable for their drama, untouchable by their guilt. Not because you don't feel, but because you've finally healed. Healing didn't make you harder. It made you softer with yourself and sharper with your boundaries. It made you fierce where you once folded. It made you whole where you once broke. You don't chase closure anymore. You don't search for explanations that never come. You don't replay what happened in your mind, hoping for a different ending. You've accepted that the apology you were waiting for is no longer needed. Peace doesn't ask for permission. It arrives when you choose yourself, fully and unapologetically. And you've chosen. You've decided that your energy is too sacred to waste on confusion, manipulation, or half-hearted love. The moment you stopped participating in your own mistreatment, the cycle began to die. The more you chose peace, the more chaos revealed itself for what it truly was. Desperate noise. You didn't lose them. They lost access to someone they were never worthy of. You didn't change overnight. You evolved through every quiet battle no one saw, and that evolution made you powerful beyond words. Not because of who you're fighting, but because of who you're becoming. Your silence now is different. It's not silence from weakness, it's silence from wisdom. It's not because you don't know what to say, it's because you no longer need to say it. Some truths don't need to be explained, they just need to be lived. And you're living it every breath, every boundary, every step forward. It's all a reflection of your inner strength. You've turned pain into purpose. You've turned chaos into clarity. And now you move differently because you are different. You are power. You owe no one an explanation for your growth. Not everyone is meant to understand the path you're walking because not everyone has the courage to walk it. You've outgrown the need to be seen by eyes that only recognize you in your weakness. You're done shrinking to fit spaces that could never hold your truth. And that decision, that sacred refusal to abandon yourself, is the greatest act of power you've ever made. You no longer seek validation from people who are intimidated by your clarity. Your silence is no longer discomfort, it's command. You've learned that the loudest force in the room is the one who no longer needs to fight to be heard. There is a shift that happens when you reclaim your energy. You stop giving explanations, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. You stop overcommitting, not because you're selfish, but because your peace has become your priority. You stop absorbing emotions that aren't yours, and you begin filtering every demand through the lens of your self-worth. That's not ego, that's healing. And healing has taught you that anyone who truly values you will never ask you to sacrifice your soul to make them feel comfortable. You are not here to prove anything. You are here to align with everything that reflects your strength, your depth, your light. The people who try to twist your voice into something shameful will never understand the power of your silence now. Because now your silence is rooted in certainty. You no longer stay silent out of fear. You choose silence as a statement of self-trust. You no longer speak to soothe others, you speak only when it aligns with truth. And when you don't speak, that stillness becomes a mirror forcing others to see themselves without your energy to hide behind. Let them call you distant. Let them say you've changed. Let them project their discomfort onto your evolution. None of that defines you. Your worth has never lived in their approval. It lives in the quiet decisions you make to protect your peace. It lives in the moments you walk away, not because you're angry, but because you've grown. And that growth is sacred. It cannot be explained to people who have not chosen the same path. You don't need them to understand your healing. You need to honor it. There's nothing louder than a person who has nothing to prove. Nothing more powerful than someone who chooses peace over pleasing. Nothing more dangerous to toxic people than the one who stops engaging. When you refuse to play their game, you take away their only power. When you protect your silence, you protect your mind. When you trust your truth, you stop asking others to confirm it. That's when the real shift happens. That's when the transformation becomes irreversible. And that's when you stop surviving your past and start owning your future. You are not less for choosing silence. You are more. More aware, more powerful, more free. You never needed to be louder. You needed to be clearer. Clarity doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain itself to confusion. It simply stands calm, certain, grounded. And now, you stand differently. Not because life became easier, but because you became unshakable. What once made you question yourself, now makes you choose yourself. What once triggered you into reaction, now reminds you of how far you've come. That's the power of inner transformation. It doesn't remove the noise, it simply teaches you how to stop answering it. Every time you silence a reaction, you build self-respect. Every time you walk away from chaos, you reinforce your peace. And every time you choose not to prove your worth, you deepen your self-worth. That's the discipline of becoming power. It's not about control over others, it's about mastery over self. The toxic voices that once lived inside your mind have grown quiet, not because they disappeared, but because you stopped feeding them. The same thoughts that used to break you are now the fuel that builds you. That's not just healing, that's transformation. You've realized that your energy is your currency. Every thought you dwell on, every emotion you absorb, every conversation you entertain, it's either investing in your future or draining it. And now you guard it like your life depends on it. Because it does. Energy is not infinite. Focus is not unlimited. Attention is not cheap. And your peace, it's priceless. Anyone who costs you your peace is far too expensive to keep. This is not selfish. This is survival with intention. This is self-love in action. You are allowed to remove yourself from what dims you. You are allowed to close doors without explanation. You are allowed to protect your joy like it's sacred, because it is. You didn't come this far to keep reliving what broke you. You came this far to break cycles, to become the version of you that no longer flinches, no longer bends, no longer apologizes for being whole. The version of you that doesn't explain why you're done, because the damage they cause is explanation enough. You're not angry, you're done. This kind of strength is rare. It's not loud, but it echoes. It's not aggressive, but it commands. It's not emotional outbursts, it's emotional clarity. And that clarity makes you untouchable to manipulation. It makes you unavailable for games. It makes you immune to guilt. The same people who once controlled your emotions now feel powerless in your presence because you've reclaimed your power, not with revenge, but with restraint. Not by fighting fire with fire, but by walking away and letting it burn without you. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not heartless. You are healed. And that difference matters. You don't owe the world softness at the expense of your sanity. You owe yourself peace. The moment you realized that was the moment you stepped into a life that no longer reacts, but rises. This is who you were always meant to be. Unbothered, unshaken, unapologetically powerful.